केशव हरि केशव हरि केशव हरि केशव केशव हरि केशव हरि माधव हरि माधव हरि माधव हरि माधव माधव हरि माधव हरि माधव हरि माधव गोविंद हरि गोविंद हरि गोविंद हरि गोविंद गोविंद हरि गोविंद हरि गोविंद हरि गोविंद ओम नमो नारायण 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 ओम नमो नारायण। ये श्री कृष्णचंद्र भगवान की जय, सद्गुरुनाथ महाराज की जय। गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी गोविंद गिरिधारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी गोविंद गिरिधारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी गोविंद गिरिधारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी गोविंद गिरिधारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी गोविंद गिरिधारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी गोविंद गिरिधारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी श्याम सुंदर मदन मोहन वृंदावन बिहारी 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 वृंदावन बिहारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी वृंदावन बिहारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी वृंदावन बिहारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी वृंदावन बिहारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी गोविंद गिरिधारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी गोविंद गिरिधारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी गोविंद गिरिधारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी गोविंद गिरिधारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी श्याम सुंदर मदन मोहन वृंदावन बिहारी श्याम सुंदर मदन मोहन वृंदावन बिहारी वृंदावन बिहारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी वृंदावन बिहारी गोवर्धन गिरिधारी गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी गोविंद 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 गिरिधारी गोविंद गिरिधारी गोविंद गिरिधारी ये वृंदावन बिहारी लाल की जय। श्री सद्गुरुनाथ महाराज की जय।
Hari Om everyone. Can you all see me and hear me clearly? Perfect. Strangely, those who have asked questions are not here. Hopefully, they'll join us after the miracle happens. You all know by this time what the miracle is, right? We say prayers and people start appearing. Hope and pray that you all have been having good summer. We in Texas have baking summer. Like you put anything out there in the sun on the car, by the time you turn around, it is already baked. It's good. I love that kind of weather. Close to India. So let us begin with the invocation, and we'll then look into the question answers that you all have been asking. Some very interesting questions, some very technical questions. So we'll look into all questions that have been asked. So let's begin. ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्तिः गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुरेव परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः. तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः. Hari Om everyone. So to this set of questions that were posed by at least 3 of you, I guess. Yeah. Let's start with he's already Siddhartha, the one who has the Artha, gained the Artha and established in it. Let's see what his questions are. Let me put him in. Why am I not able to? Usually it gives me the capacity to put you in. Okay. Hari Om. బాగున్నావా?
బాగున్నాను, మీరు ఎలా ఉన్నారు?
బ్రహ్మాండంగా ఉన్నాను. Doing good, thank you. So you have multiple questions for me. The first question that you have is Bhagwan Veda Vyasji compiled the Vedas based on the pre-existing Veda Shakha traditions during his time. what was the basis or source of his compilations of the Puranas? See, most of the Vedic literature or all of the Vedic literature was in a oral tradition. Similarly, these different stories of all the Devi Devatas, sometimes we'll have to go into the very detail and understand that when we say we have 33 crores of gods, that is a wrong interpretation. It is 33 kinds of gods, kinds of devatas. Those who primarily help seamlessly contain and manage this entire creation. So there are Ashtavasus, then there is the Ekadasha Rudra, Dvadasha. Ekadasha means Ashtavasus are 8. Then Ekadasha Rudra, there are 11 different Rudra forms. So 8 plus 11, please help me there. So 19. Then Dvadasha Aditya, so 31. And 2 Ashwini Kumaras, they are twins. These Ashwini Kumaras are the ones, Devatas, who gave the Ayurveda. It comes from them. They are the medicine man. They take care of the medicine department of the Swarga. Ashwini Kumara. So put them together, there are 33. Now, Bhagavan, that Ishvara, appears in the form of Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara. So, Vishnu and Vishnu's avatars, Devi and Devi avatars, and then Bhagavan, Shiva, Kartikeya, Ganesha, and their stories. It was Maukika, Vachika, Prasanga. And we have had these traditions wherein these Maukika, Vachika traditions, it comes as a display within the Ashtadasha Puranas. There is this particular group of them that speak on Puranas. Specifically, there is Suta. Suta, usually they are the charioteers by profession, but there are some who take to the learning of scriptures. So they get onto the public platforms and do different kathas. There are some traditional kathakar which happens even in local dialects. Like in Andhra region, I can very clearly tell you that there is Harikatha, Burrakatha. Then there is one in Karnataka, Yakshagana. Then there is one in Tamil Nadu. There is one in the entire UP, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh. These are in local dialects. So there are Vachika, there are the vocal traditions. So these Suta Mahashaya is invited where these several of them who have done with their life's work responsibilities, they have now withdrawn into the Vanaprastha, and they do Satrayaga, a group of 41 days of Havan, Yajna Karma. In the morning, early morning before the sun rises, almost 2.5 hours before the sun rises, they wake up, they do their Sandhya Vandana and offer the Arghya by the time the sun is rising. And then they do Nitya Anusthana Puja, everything. And then they start the Yaga Karma. After the Yaga Karma is done, they'll have light lunch. And then Around 3:30ish or so, after having chai pani, they would sit down and Suta Mahashaya, Sutaji will be called. His name is Suta, or his title is Suta rather. Specifically in the Puranas, you will find his name is Romaharshana. What a beautiful name. He narrates the story of Bhagavan in such a way that Roma means your hair. It stands on end in such amazement in being one with the story of Bhagavan. So such Roma Harshana is invited, given a sanctified place. It is called the Vyasa Pitha, the place of Vyasa Maharaj. Therefore, you should not take it lightly that there is an asana sitting there on the stage, so you go and sit there and try to. No, that is a very reverential place. You shouldn't even step on it. If you are not the one sitting on it, you should always walk around it, because that is where Vyasa Bhagavan resides. So he is given that Uchita Satkara, and he's made to sit there, and he now speaks till late in the night. Then there is Arati done. Then they'll have light dinner, and this goes on for 41 days. And in 41 days, the entire Purana is completed. So there is that Vachika tradition. So through those Vachika traditions, there all these different kathas of different Devi Devatas have been gathered in, and he compiled them into the Puranas. So that would be the chronological ordering of all the Devi Devatas, their experiences with their devotees, and the examples I have already given when we were going through. So that should give you a holistic picture of it. Your second question is now the intriguing one. Why does Atharva Veda seem to be sometimes treated differently from Rik, Yajus, Sama Veda? Example, in Bhagavad Gita it is referred, and it is also Trayi Vedam. When Veda is also referred, it is usually referred to Trayi, and Atharva Veda is not mentioned sometimes. In Aditya Hridayam, Rig Yajus Sama Paragaha. So why is this treatment to the Atharva Veda? That which was practiced in the region between Ganga Yamuna Saraswati belt, that which triangular portion, there are the practitioners of Rik Yajus Samaveda, which is quite predominant in its functionality. Most of the Atharva Veda was on the west side of Sindhu Nadi, not on the east side. Rest of them were on the east side. In fact, even Vedavyasa Bhagavan had to travel across Sindhu river to go to Jabala Rishi to learn it from him, so that it can be compiled into that one work that he was doing. So the regular that is referred to are the three, but it doesn't mean that the fourth one doesn't be a part of the Vedic literature. That is one normal understanding. Second understanding, I have to evaluate this. I have not yet had the opportunity to evaluate it, so I say it with caution. Is the Atharva Veda is the portion where there are a lot of Tantra Vidya that is incorporated. Therefore, it is to be given, it is kept as a secret and given only to a qualified student when necessary. For the rest of the humanity to use, this is quite open. It's like an open book, anybody can refer to it. But for the Atharva, there are certain special qualifications, and then alone that particular aspect is taught to them. Therefore, it is kept as separate. Now, Interesting question here that you ask. What lipi did Vyasa Bhagavan write down Veda, Purana, Ityadi? Now, whenever you mention, whenever you write, whenever you type, whenever you speak, I would request you to carry forward the habit of referring to them with the respect that they deserve. So, Vyasa is not like your buddy or a friend where you refer to him as, what did Vyasa write this in? Vyasa did this, Vyasa did that. Some like Bhagwan Veda Vyasa. That is what I. So, what lipi did he write it in? Sharada lipi is, say, about 1500 to 2000 years. But prior to that, there must have been Brahmi lipi. There have been certain artifacts that were found in Mathura, Vrindavan, in these excavations, including in Dwarika. So there you will find these written in Brahmi script. So my guesswork, I have not seen a Talapatra with Brahmi lipi of Vedic literature myself, so I'm going on a limb and guessing here, because I know for a fact that these artifacts have been found and they have been dated right around the same time as Bhagwan Veda Vyasji appears. So my fair guess would be that it is in Brahmi lipi. So I gave you both reasons why Sharda lipi could not have been, and by seeing the artifacts, then fair guess would be that it would be Brahmi lipi. I mentioned that a Vedanta Sampradaya, Advaita, Dvaita, Vishishtadvaita ityadi, requires a commentary on Prasthanatraya. Were there any other Sampradayas from before Veda Vyasaji's time, since Bhagavad Gita and Brahma Sutras were not written, they were written only after that. Upanishads were not compiled together yet. Yes, it gets more structure only after that. This is about a 5,000 year tradition that you can say. Were there these schools? Definitely there were these schools of thought, because Patanjali Yoga Sutras were at least about a millennium and a half to 2 millenniums before Veda Vyasji himself. So how do we know it? Veda Vyasji himself has commented on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, and in the introduction he praises, he very heavily praises Patanjali Rishi and says that before me, about 2000 years ago, this work blessed this earth and I am quite blessed enough to have the opportunity to comment on it. That is how he begins. So with that being said, one of the Darshana Shastra is of the Shad Darshana is the Yoga Shastra. When I say yoga here, it is the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. So were there before traditions which that would have been, but they were formalized and given this kind of an outlook only when Veda Vyasa Bhagavan has put them in a written format. As you look into the Vedic literature, Puranic literature, Smriti literature, you will not find anything that is mentioned as other than Advaita Siddhanta. Now, it is up to the rest of them who have to now establish a certain sampradaya, to certain traditional outlook for them to establish that. But then Bhagwan Shankaracharya ji himself has given a clear picture, a comprehensive consolidated picture by his commentaries on the 10 Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita and the Brahma Sutras. In fact, any confusion with regards to our dharmic way of life, we can go back to the Brahma Sutras and it should clarify with amazing clarity. It is that clear. Though they are only in aphorisms, like shortened versions, capsule format, but when you start discussing on them, when you start diving deep into it, you will find that most of the Siddhanta, when I say it is not about the doing, it is about that which guides the doing. So it is the principles of understanding, they have been very clearly fortified. So it is up to the rest of them who want to now say establish a sampradaya, then they have to write that commentary on those three. Prior to that was there, but it was not this formalized, but now it is. It gives a good base work for people to function in. Does that answer your questions?
Yes, Swamiji. Thank you.
Okay, I'm glad you don't have a subset of questions because this itself is quite extensive. Not that I have a complaint, it was good. Now the next set of questions, thank you, Ma. Next set of questions are from Naya. Let's add a spotlight to her. Hari Om Naya.
Hariam Swamiji.
Kem cho?
Majama, તમે કેમ છો?
Boddu barabar. Everybody okay?
Yes, everyone's good, Swamiji.
Enjoying your summer?
Yes, yes. Very warm weather. It's really nice here.
I will not believe a Canadian calling something as warm as really being warm. For me, it would be cold.
Probably.
Okay. Now, getting to your questions. You have a couple of questions. So let me get straight to the question. When the sun reflects on the surface of water, both light and heat get transmitted into the water. However, when conscious principle expresses through the intellect, we only see existence express effortlessly in all beings. But both the Chit and Ananda vary from persons to person. Why so? How do we get them to express effortlessly? You have made an assumption, quite a bold assumption that you have made. You're partially right in it. The conscious principle, when it expresses as the reflected consciousness, both the aspects of Sat and Chit, existence and conscious principle, express effortlessly. Now I'll ask you a couple of questions. So unmute yourself and be ready to answer. Very simple questions. Ready? First question. Do you exist?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Do you need a proof of authentication or authentication to prove that you exist for yourself?
No.
Do you need a ID card or a RFID or a chip or something that needs to beep to say, yes, I exist?
No.
No. So I exist and I don't need a proof of authority to prove that I exist.
Mhm.
Now the third question. Do you know that you exist?
Yes.
Okay. I'll not go further how and why. Do you know do you know that you exist? That's it. Simple questions. Yes, this is called Samanya Dharma, very generic, that everybody, that I exist and I know that I exist. I exist is the existential principle. Knowing that I exist is the conscious principle. So both of them are expressing quite effortlessly. Therefore, the entire rhetoric of sadhana is to find ananda or happiness. It is not that the Hindu rishis have made the effort of sadhana as happiness. If you look and ask at anybody, why do you do what you do? Our basic answer turns out to be to find happiness. I want to be successful. ¿Por qué? Why? क्यों भाई? Why do you want success? Why do you want to accomplish? So that I can be happy. Everything that we do, whatever we do, as a spark of life, it is in search, in seeking that happiness. That way, whether you put a title as sadhaka doing sadhana or not, everybody is a sadhaka then. Even those who are addicted to something are in search of that happiness only. But sadly, they are searching for it in wrong places. That it not only binds them, but it becomes repetitively monotonous that they are not able to get out of it. So you do an experiment, you see that it is not reaching to the end that which you seek. But by the time you realize it to move to the next experiment, you are caught up in this loop, not allowing you to get out of it. Whenever we get into that rut, that is where we call it as papa. It is not the equivalence of sin and hell and that kind of a thing as it comes in the Abrahamic reference, but it is more like that which creates that sense of agitation because you constantly want to seek that ananda and you don't find it, but you are stuck here, and that agitated lifestyle that you live is called papa. Punya is to pave your path out of it. With the steadiness, with the equanimity of the mind, you pave your path out of it. Therefore, you do the japa, you do the tirtha yatra, you go attend satsang, so that you can fortify your mind, strengthen your mind to get out of it. Right? All this for what? So that that happiness can be gained. Now, what is the difference between all the other methods and means to find that happiness versus that which is being promised by the scriptures? What the scientist or the economist or the politician or anybody for that matter, they're trying to find methods so that it can give the masses of humanity that sweet pill that they are seeking, which is happiness. But none of them can promise that what they are giving is something that is truly permanent solution. Food in 3 hours, mama, can I have ice cream? And then within another 2 hours, mama, can I have some pizza? Come on, can I have pakoda? Can I have that? Can I have a brownie? Can I constant every 2 hours gap? It never satiates. Maybe at that time it gives a moment of joy, which I enjoy thoroughly, but it is not satiating. So what does sadhana promise? What does the Hindu way of life promise? That that which is being pointed is of the nature of permanency. Having reached where you don't have to seek happiness any further. This is where many neo-intellectuals fall trap. Oh, but if I am already happy and if I'm already satisfied, then there is no enthusiasm and energy for me to go out and do anything. Now, that is a wrong assumption. Why is it a wrong assumption? Somebody who is sad or has not been successful, they have this withdrawal from the world. They want to sit in a dark corner. They don't want to interact with anyone. Isn't that what happens when I am agitated and feel sad and I want to lock myself up into the room? I don't want to talk to anybody. And then if somebody even knocks, don't disturb me. I just want to. A person who is happy, do you think they'll be sitting in a sad corner? Even that little joy that you get out of the worldly experiences, what do we do when we find that quantum of joy? We run around to all those people that we care and we share. Isn't it? Supposing you made a cake and it turned out really good. What do? You go, Mama, taste this. Dada, taste this. Your brother, taste this. Your neighbor, taste this. Why? It has come really good. It is fluffy. It has that moistness in it, and the taste has just blended in. You just want to share that joy, don't you? Now, for somebody who has gained the highest, that which would never cease to stop, do you think that person will be sitting in a dark corner? The only difference between our kind of work and their kind of work is we work in the search of happiness, whereas they work in expressing their happiness. We work for happiness, they work in happiness so that they can distribute it to as many. Therefore, in the Shruti, in the scriptures, we see the reference that it is often read Loka Kalyanartham. What is the greatest kalyana, greatest auspicious benefit for this world of humanity? Is that which can find you three things: a sense of security, sense of peace of mind, and joyful disposition. And that is what they are there to distribute. Why does it differ from mind to mind? I mean, see, you are a Gujarati, so I'm sure at home there is a lot of roti that happens, right? Right? You have your mom, you have your grandparents, you have your, you must have eaten from different people. It is the same flour. It's just nothing but the ground wheat powder with salt and a little bit of water. When some make it, it is so tasty that it just melts in your mouth. When some make it, it is like, no, where is that difference from the material being the same? Similarly, the intellect, which is the layer of matter, sometimes the intellect is too thick to grasp things. Sometimes the intellect is too sharp to grasp things. So that variation, even with the glass that can refract light when it is used in the lenses, even if there is a slightest crack in it, like I'm talking of the cameras, the DSLRs, the lenses that are there, even if there is a slightest crack, there is a discrepancy in the photo that is captured. Similarly, the intellect. Now, how many cracks are there in our intellects? Just with this very life, that which we have allowed it to seep so deep in that it has created cracks in there, layers of trauma, layers of that which dissatisfaction, feeling of left out, All of this has created the blemishes. So the reflection of that is not complete unto itself. Therefore, you remember in Hanuman Chalisa when we start, Shri Guru Charana Saroj Raja Nija Manu Mukur Sudhari Baranau Raghuvar Bimal Jasu Jodayak Phalachari. So there, Bhagavan Tulsidas ji says very clearly that may I take the blessings, that dust from the feet of my Guru, so that I can rub all these cracks of the intellect. Why? Buddhiheen tanu janike. I have been dumb all this while. I have not used this opportunity. So that when with the dust I shine the surface, removing all the dirt, that which is essentially my true nature, there is a possibility of me to recognize and bask in it. Therefore, sadhana is focused on only in ascertaining that happiness, not about consciousness or existence. Do you ever say that, oh, I am trying to be successful so that I can be conscious, so that I can be existential? No. So that I can be happy is a very common thing. We never have an existential crisis. We never have a conscious crisis. We only have ananda crisis. And that is what sadhana is geared towards. So I think that should answer it. But tell me, is it clear?
Yes, Swamiji, thank you.
Okay, now going into the second part of your question. Since I am that conscious principle, why do I have access only to one intellect and not to all of the intellects? You can't handle the truth. Once, this is my first introduction to Puja Gurudev. I think I've shared this experience. I'll cut this whole story short. So we were not interested in listening to Gurudev. We were sitting at the very end, not even paying attention. And he was roaring in the mic. Suddenly the sound stopped. It caught our attention. And what we were discussing was not what Swamiji was talking, what Gurudev was talking. We were definitely not interested in it. So somebody referred saying, oh, these kind of people, they can read our minds. Whatever happens in our buddhi, they can read. I was like, nah, it is not possible. It cannot happen. Nobody can read anybody's. It's not like an open market that you can just pick up on anybody's and they can start listening to or seeing everything. So there was obviously two groups that got, and we were debating on it. Suddenly the rumbling noise, that roaring noise stopped. It caught our attention. And after about a brief 5 to 10 seconds, what we all hear to our shock was that many of you here sitting, my friends, think that I can read your minds. We are like, oh my goodness. And he says, believe me, I have no such capacity. Okay. And then the punchline is the last line. He says, even if I did, why would I be interested in your trash? So in a way, not knowing other intellects, being conscious of it, I think it's a good way to protect ourselves. Okay, that's one part. Second part is, in a close-knit family where you have your grandparents, your parents, siblings, right? You have been staying in the same house. Without an expression of vocal expression, when you look at your parents, do you clearly get a message that they are angry or happy or satisfied or dissatisfied? Right? What, you're reading their minds now? See, what happens is when you are in that close association, you pick up on the bodily gestures, movement, and various things. But above all, you are so connected that, supposing, say, your brother wants to go ask something to dad, and you say, nah, not now. He is not in a good mood right now. Maybe after dinner when he settles down, I think that would be a good time. Right? So you know the time when you have to put your indent of application of whatever that is to be requested, where it doesn't get rejected, because once it gets rejected, there is no point of going back, and then because he's going to say, haven't I told this again? Why are you bringing it in? So to avoid all of that, the good timing must be, how are you deciphering all of this? Right? Even without having the capacity to dive into others, you are able to pick it up. So the more you are becoming alert, the more you tend to understand your surroundings. Now imagine the alertness. Presently our alertness maybe is 5-10%. Imagine that mind where you are 100% awareful of your surroundings, of your environments, of your totality. That is called an awakened state. And that awakened state is one with the entire totality. Until then, we are limited by our own intellect. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you, Naya. Okay. We will now proceed to the next one. That is Hemant. Where is Hemant? Hariomda.
Hariom.
எப்படி இருக்க?
சௌக்கியம் சுவாமிஜி, சுவாமிஜி எப்படி இருக்கார்?
நான் எப்பதான் சூப்பர்டா. Everybody okay at home?
Yes, Swamiji.
Awesome. So now let us dive straight into your question. I remember a section in Kenopanishad that states that if I think I know the Supreme, I do not actually know it. How then is this truth to be actually realized? Naham manyesu vedeti nona vedeti vedacha. So the teacher turns around asking, there are some who clearly say that, oh, I think I understood. There are some who say that maybe understood. So to all of them, say, go do your sadhana again. Because after this particular segment that you have quoted, the next segment is the answer to your question, where you dug all the way up to the surface of the treasure box, and then you turned around and say, where is the key? Where can I find this treasure? It's in the next segment. So in the next segment, it says, the one who understands that the intellect is limited in understanding because it is a direct sense of experience which does not require the intellect's proximity to validate it. The moment intellect validates something, what happens? It becomes a thought processed knowledge. Thought processed knowledge always is limited, will always perish. It is not permanent. So therefore, anything that the intellect can process is up to that point wherein it comes to understand that I am not this reflected consciousness. My source is that true nature. Therefore, this reflection can be seen. And then it goes into silence. In that silence, it merges into its own true nature. So what is happening in the Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana practice? That through the Manana, through the Shravana I gain the knowledge, then through the Manana I am doing the Vichara, where I am processing the knowledge that I have gained. I am trying to evaluate and contemplate on it from all different possible angles. Having thus gained the firmness of that nugget of wisdom, the ignorance, the cloud of ignorance, that is removed. That is what this knowledge is doing. The intellect, that cloud of ignorance is removed. Now, what is happening after the cloud of ignorance is removed? That which is always shining, that which is whose nature is to be constantly shining forth, permeating that brilliance of presence, the conscious principle, it reveals itself. And in order to understand that revelation is my own true nature, I do not require the stamp of authority from the intellect. Why? Because the intellect also is borrowing its capacity to contemplate and validate from that very source. And that source first illumines itself before illumining anything else. Therefore, we call it as self-illumined state of realization. So when somebody asks, have you understood it? It is not the question of understanding at all. When that is understood, that layer of confusion has passed by, is been removed totally. Such person will just sit in silence and smile. Have you understood? See, when you are not eaten, you have to justify a lot. When your mom has cooked something and it's still sitting there, you have to justify a lot because you have had a pizza or you have had something else at the office or whatever. But when you have already eaten it, all that you have to do is, you don't have to give lot of explanations to it. Therefore, Adi Shankaracharya ji says, Mauna Vyakhya Prakatita Parabrahma Tattvam Yuvanam. It expresses eloquently in silence. Comprende?
I think so.
That was a tricky question. Did you understand? Because if you say that you did, then you did not. You fall back into the trap. Anyways, I'll stop but I think you got the step-by-step logic of it. And since you are here and there are no further questions, we end with that. Why don't you take us through Hanuman Chalisa, which we have not heard in a while? Take it away.
Shri Guru Charana Saroja Raja Nijamana Mukura Sudari Parano Raghuvara Bhimalayasha Jodhayak Falachari Buddhihina Tanu Janike Sumiro Pavana Kumar Bala Buddhi Vedya Dehu Mohi Harahu Kale Savikar Jaya Hanuman Jnana Guna Sagar Jaya Kapishati Huloka Ujagar Ramaduta Tulita Baladhama Anjani Putra Pavana Sutanama Mahavira Vikrama Pajarangi Kumati Nivara Sumati Ke Sangi कंचन वर्ण विराज सुवेसा कानन कुंडल कुंचित केसा हाथ वज्र हो ध्वजा बिराजे कांधे मूंज जनेऊ साजे शंकर सुवन केसरी नंदन तेज प्रताप महाजगवंदन विद्यावान गुणी अति चातुर राम काज करिबे को आतुर प्रभु चरित्र सुनिबे को रसिया राम लखन सीता मन बसिया सूक्ष्म रूप धरि सियहि दिखावा विकट रूप धरि लंक जरावा भीम रूप धरि असुर समारे रामचंद्र के काज सवारे लाय संजीवन लखन जियाए श्री रघुवीर हर्षि उर लाए रघुपति कीनी बहुत बढ़ाई तुम मम प्रिय भरतहि सम भाई सहस बदन तुम रोजस गावे अस कहि श्रीपति कंठ लगावे सनकादिक ब्रह्म आदि मुनीसा नारद सारद सहित अहिंसा यम कुबेर दिक्पाल जहाते कवि कोविद कहि सके कहाते तुम उपकार सुग्रीव ही कीना राम मिलाय राजपद दीना तुमरो मंत्र विभीषण माना लंकेश्वर भय सब जग जाना युग सहस्र जो जन पर भानु लील्योता ही मधुर फल जान प्रभु मुद्रिका मेलि मुख माहि जल दिलांगी गए अचरज नाही दुर्गम काज जगत के जेते सुगम अनुग्रह तुम्हरे तेते राम दुआरे तुम रखवारे हो तन आज्ञा बिनु पैसारे सब सुख लहे तुम्हारी शरणा तुम रक्षक काहू को डरना आपन तेज सवारो आपे तीनों लोक हाकते कांपे भूत पिशाच निकट नहीं आवे महावीर जब नाम सुनावे नासे रोग हरे सब पीरा जपत निरंतर हनुमत बीरा संकट से हनुमान छुड़ावे मन क्रम बचन ध्यान जो लावे सब पर राम तपस्वी राजा तिनके काज सकल तुम साज और मनोरथ जो कोई लावे सोई अमित जीवन फल पावे चारों युग परताप तुम्हारा है प्रसिद्ध जगत उजियारा साधु संत के तुम रखवारे असुर निकंदन राम दुलारे अष्ट सिद्धि नव निधि के दाता असवर दीन जानकी माता राम रसायन तुम्हारे पासा सदा रहो रघुपति के दासा तुम्हारे भजन राम को भावे जन्म जन्म के दुख बिसरावे अंत काल रघुवर पुर जाई जहाँ जन्म हरि भक्त कहाई और देवता चित्तन धरई हनुमत से ही सर्व सुख करई संकट कटे मिटे सब पीरा जो सुमिरै हनुमत बलवीरा जय 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 हनुमान गोसाई कृपा करौ गुरुदेव की नाई जो शत बार पाठ कर कोई झूठ ही बंदी महासुख होई जो यह पढ़े हनुमान चालीसा होई सिद्धि साखी गौरीसा तुलसीदास सदा हरि चेरा कीजे नाथ हृदय मह डेरा कीजे नाथ हृदय मह डेरा पवन तनय संकट हरण मंगल मूर्ति रूप राम लखन सीता सहित हृदय बसहु सुरभूप सियावर रामचंद्र की जय पवन सुत हनुमान की जय उमापति महादेव की जय बोलो भाई सब संतन की जय
Shri Sadgurunath Maharaj ki jai. Okay, next week will be your turn to answer, and you'll have to prep by Wednesday evening. I think we should have the questions posted on the group. I think one of you are not in the group, so we'll make sure that you are in the group. That way you get to see the questions and prep. So see you next week. Enjoy your summer. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramayaha, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet, Asato Ma Sadgamaya, Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityorma Amritangamaya. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate, Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shant Shant Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Take care, everyone. See you next week. Same time, same place. Hari Om.